right. Well, we're here on the main set with two very distinguished guests. Again, my name is Trevor Peters. I'm a junior in the College of Liberal Arts studying mass communication and a student in the Brian Lamb School of Communication. And we're here at the Super Tuesday watch party, a great collaboration between the Brian Lamb School of Communication, the Department of Political Science, Pi Sigma Alpha, and the Honors College as well, here in the Hicks Underground Library, of course, on the campus of our own Purdue University. If you're on campus and you're watching at home, we encourage you to come see us. We're in room G90, or G980, excuse me, and we have a good crowd of about 100, 150 people here. We'd love for you to come and join us. So I'm here with two very distinguished guests, and our first one, of course, is President Mitch Daniels, Purdue president. He became the 12th president of Purdue University in January of 2013 at the conclusion of his second term as the governor of the state of Indiana. He was elected governor in 2004 by in his first bid for any elected office, and he was re-elected in 2008, receiving more votes than any candidate for any public office in the state's history. President Daniels worked for President Ronald Reagan's administration and held executive positions with the Hudson Institute and Eli Lilly and Company. And prior to becoming the governor, he became President George W. Bush's budget director. And then, of course, in March of 2015, Fortune magazine named President Daniels to its list of the top 50 world leaders in recognition of his leadership as both the governor and the president of Purdue. So please welcome President Daniels, everybody. Thank you. And we also want to welcome Mr. Alexander Heffner. Mr. Heffner is a journalist and a civic educator who has reported extensively on the youth vote and the political engagement of young voters. He founded the first ever online national student newspapers covering the 2008 presidential campaign and the first year of the Obama presidency. Mr. Heffner is also the host of The Open Mind on PBS. The show is a nationally broadcasted public affairs interview program founded by his grandfather, Richard. The Open Mind first aired in 1956 and is the longest running public affairs program in the history of American public television. And Mr. Heffner's writings on the millennial vote, very fitting for where we are here at Purdue, has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, USA Today, and other leading newspapers and magazines. And of course, these two gentlemen are no strangers. President Daniels actually was on the Open Mind on September 15th show of this past year, and we're very, very excited for both of them to be here with us today. So please help me in welcoming both President Daniels and Mr. Heffner. So first off, we want to welcome you, Mr. Heffner, to Purdue University. We're really excited to have you here and for you to have joined us this day on this great Super Tuesday. And we hope you've seen some Boilermaker hospitality and some people have treated you well here at Purdue.
They have indeed.
Thank you so much. And so, again, this is a collaboration between the Brian Lamb School of Communication, the Department of Political Science, Pi Sigma Alpha, and the Honors College. And what we really want to talk about today is the importance of citizens in the election, and in particular the importance of the student vote. And so we're all aware of the individual political candidates, but what we really want to focus on is the issues at hand and how that impacts Purdue and the student vote as well. So my first question I'll start with you, President Daniels. What do you feel are some of the issues that younger people seem to be more concerned with in this election?
I don't pretend to speak for them, but I speak to a lot of them, on campus and elsewhere. I think, first and foremost, like Americans of all ages, they're concerned about the health of this economy. It's not performing well. It's the weakest recovery we've ever seen from a recession. You're supposed to have a very sharp snapback from a deep recession. We didn't. So you have the lowest percentage of people working since the days of the stay-at-home mom. You've had half of recent graduates either unemployed or underemployed. And so I think economic apprehension, which you see across the electorate, is very much on the minds of the young people I talk to. Now, of course, we feel different about Boilermakers.
Of course.
Because their track record in securing a great start on their careers is very strong, but we have to be concerned about that huge majority of young people who weren't lucky enough to make it to Purdue or to a place like it. And right now, if they're worried, they have reason to be.
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Heffner, in your studies on the millennial vote, what do you feel is truly hindering students from, or what are they interested in on college campuses?
Well, my analysis, in part, is consistent with President Daniels insofar as The fact that what's unified the early surge of Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders was this realization that the blue-collar struggle is real. And when I was based in New Hampshire several months leading to the primary, first in the nation primary, what I got from younger voters was, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 5%, 4.9% unemployment was not an accurate reflection of a nation underemployed and unemployed in a lot of instances, but more important, through different messages, they're both tackling this issue of the concentration of wealth and the fact that even if you are making an income, it's not an adequate wage. And in his own right, Donald Trump has tackled the issue of income inequality just as Senator Sanders has. So that to me is the issue on campuses, finding employment, economic growth, and a sustainable path forward for millennials to enter the job market, and collectively fed up with a two-party establishment that has been a hindrance, like you said, as opposed to a vehicle for more progress.
Great. So then, in the 2012 election, approximately 38% of young people ages 18 to 24 turned out to vote. So then why do you think these college students are not voting? And not just that, why does that matter, President Daniels?
There's nothing new about younger people voting at a lower percentage than their elders. That's been probably true in every election we've ever seen. But as people progress in life and put down roots and have deeper stakes in society, they quite naturally take a greater interest. So I don't fault young people necessarily. I wish every single student on this campus and every young person everywhere would vote, but that's a long time phenomenon. I do think that for the moment there's some no one is speaking persuasively to the issues Alexander just talked about, and to the apprehensions a lot of young people feel about their future and their future prospects. And until someone does persuasively, you'll probably continue to see the historic pattern of low turnout.
What do you think?
Right, persuasively and with some modicum of civility, we would hope. This has been a gutter, a cesspool of an election. It's difficult to reconcile with American values. While I mention Donald Trump in the context of winning blue-collar support, it's frustrating. The governor, the president made a comment about the role of money in politics. Let's not forget you're dealing with a billionaire who exerts significant media presence and built a reputation, whether it was a fake reputation or not, on a celebrity reality show, The Apprentice, that simulated executive decisions. As I said to a host of students today, you can decide for yourself if that's a simulation of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But I think tonight you'll see in real time whether there are Republicans still in the party who can coalesce around Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz. I'm sure they will in Texas, his native state. But it's a decisive night for that reason. And when you hear voices of sanity across the ideological waves calling for reasoned, thoughtful discussion and saying, look, we're gonna support Hillary Clinton if you nominate Donald Trump. That is a tectonic plate potentially shifting for the Republican Party, and I think I was very eager to be here with the governor president, Mitch Daniels, who appeared on the show, and I said to him on camera or maybe off camera, he and Bill Frist, Dr. Frist, who I had on not so long before him, represented an intellectual school of the conservative movement that needs to get traction, and we will see if Rubio and Cruz can present a feasible alternative to Donald Trump, but it's not all about the blue collar angst for millennials. To go back to your initial premise, It's about bringing a set of American values that represent the diversity of the experience here at Purdue and at Notre Dame, where I was yesterday, and across the country. And millennials liked President Obama because they found him to model a kind of discourse, idealistic, even if it was, that could unify the American electorate, even if they haven't been unified in the left-right paradigm and divide still exists.
Great. Well, we have a couple questions from Twitter that I was given, and I'd like to ask the president to answer this one first. So, what is the most pressing issue of this campaign, and so what candidate messages and strategies are catching your attention?
Well, Trevor, you asked us a minute ago what issues have been addressed.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I want to mention what I think has not been addressed, which is of such direct, I think, transcendent importance to young people. The debts that have been piled up in this country by the parents and grandparents of students at Purdue and elsewhere are unconscionable, and they're unpayable. They'll be defaulted on by one means or another. The question is, will it wreck the country economically and socially when it happens? And when are we going to start doing something to forestall that? And this is the old tired metaphor, the third rail of American politics. But it's an arithmetic matter. It's not an ideological matter. And in both parties, Republicans are no better, with one exception, who's not in the race anymore. None of them has gone near this. Some have actually said counterproductive things. You know, we worry a lot about student debt here at Purdue, trying to keep costs down, and we're happy to see debt of Purdue students coming down very substantially. But it never leaves my mind that the average student with debt maybe owes $30,000. That same student already owes twice that that they'll have to pay back in the future because of unredeemable promises that were made to their elders. Somebody's got to talk about that issue. Otherwise, it's an incredibly unfair intergenerational inequity.
So then what do you think are some of the issues you said that the candidates, they should be talking about, but they're not?
Yeah, that's 1, 2, and 3 to me.
Mm-hmm.
The American people have been misled for a very long time. I don't fault the American people. They've been told things that aren't true. That Social Security money in there, you put it in, it's yours. No, it's a pyramid. You paid for the retirees of today, and somebody else is supposed to pay for you.
Mm-hmm.
But that the arithmetic of that is running out. Likewise for Medicare. So someone has got to begin talking about it. We're a lucky country. If we got busy, we could start addressing these things before today's young people have a terrible unfairness inflicted on them.
Great. Well, Mr. Heffner, another question from Twitter that we want to ask you. So what is the worst case scenario for both parties tonight? What could happen? What's the worst case scenario?
I'll answer if he answers after me. I know. Worst case scenario. Well, look, it depends on your disposition, of course. The one thing I'd add vis-a-vis Trump and the rest of the field is, you know, he's making the argument that he can be kind of the granddaddy of the mogul who unites the various candidates and office holders who've benefited from his largesse over the years, right? And he would be doing that at the expense of maybe the core democratic value. This is a Republican government, not an oligarchy, and it's also not the will of a totalitarian that, you know, gets to rule the day. And if he continues with the brashness that has defined his candidacy and the insults and injury and creating a climate in which, you know, violence can really sweep the day, then it's violating that basic principle, that basic promise of a more perfect union. Domestic tranquility. I don't know, is there anything tranquil in furtherance of domestic tranquility represented by Donald Trump? I don't know, but thus far the primary contest shows not. So, I mean, there are those establishment Republicans who will say the cataclysmic event of today in a Donald Trump sweep of most of the contests, or even, you know, a majority of them is going to lead to a delegate math that favors him, and then they have to consider whether they're going to get the governor and Governor Bush and Governor Romney to unify around dark horse or to put all their eggs in the basket of Marco Rubio or Ted Cruz or John Kasich, by the way, who has a strong record on the deficit in terms of work that he's done. So that's on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, I don't know if this is such a nightmare in light of her strong victory in Nevada, but certainly if the contests are evenly split, the Democrats are going to be concerned about a drawn-out delegate fight. The superdelegates give Secretary Clinton an edge, but in the final analysis, if she doesn't win most of the contests, it's going to continue on because of the proportional way in which the numbers are divvied up among the Democratic contests. So uncertainty is one thing. I think Secretary Clinton and Senator Obama, then Senator Clinton too, they helped each other in 2008. But going beyond Super Tuesday this cycle, there are other Tuesdays that are comparably super potentially. Going beyond this Tuesday is a hard sell to party loyalists who want to unify behind a candidate. The prospect of a contested convention at one point was very possible, both for the Dems and the Republicans, and while the math actually favors a contested convention more for the Democrats, it's the Republicans who are gearing up for one.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, President Daniels, in looking at all the states that we have today, which one do you think is the most consequential for both parties today?
I got to leave that to Alexander and people who are watching more closely than I am. Let me just make a couple general observations that I just find interesting in a clinical sense. So one of them is, people wring their hands about money in politics. Have you noticed it didn't make any difference? All the money was spent on losing candidacies. I think we can all relax a little bit more about that than some people have. And this term, I don't even know who they're talking about, but establishment. If there is an establishment, it didn't count for anything either. It's been run right off the playing field on the Republican side. I guess if there is one, you can find one on the Democratic side to an extent. But for all the noise around those two subjects, they haven't figured at all into the election results so far, and odds are they won't again tonight. So in a year of one surprise after another, maybe those are two more.
Yeah. What about you? What do you think as far as which state is the most consequential heading into the evening and in the upcoming hours?
Well, into the evening, Texas and Virginia, I'd say. I mean, it's, again, depends on which states are more competitive, but if Senator Rubio can come out with a few victories, he extends his candidacy. But I really do think, despite what the governor or the president has said about the establishment, I mean, at a certain point, I wouldn't define it as establishment as much as in terms of viability, in terms of a consensus builder. We are talking about two parties, right? And just as Donald Trump is claiming that there will be crossover appeal if he's the nominee because he's got this huge turnout, apparently voters who haven't come out are really coming out of the woodwork this cycle. I think some of the public statements of Republicans just today, Speaker Ryan, Senator McConnell, demonstrate that there's something to preserve other than an establishment, right? There's something to preserve in terms of reasoned, a reasoned and reasonable identity as a...
Oh, there absolutely is. I'm just saying that whoever these people are supposed to be, they're not nearly as tough as
they're not established. Yeah, I mean,
Trevor, I'll give you this answer, not as to any one state, but I think something important to watch is just how many, Alexander just mentioned, how many people turn out. So, for instance, I looked in South Carolina, people fastened on the fact that Secretary Clinton won by a big margin.
Right.
But the turnout was way down. 107,000 fewer people voted on the Democratic side in South Carolina than the last time they had a contest in 2008. Meanwhile, 363,000 more people voted in the Republican primary than voted in 2008, and it flipped. In 8, more Democrats showed up than Republicans this year by a huge margin, the other way around. So, you know, I think that as you look across all these states, I'd pay close attention to how much enthusiasm, how much interest and support there is. It's not predictive necessarily of the general election, but it matters a lot. Which, if it's at all close, it matters a lot which side feels they've got somebody they're passionate about.
So then, what do you think these candidates need to do to gain the enthusiasm of millennials and college students?
Well, I'd hope speak directly to them, and not in a something for nothing mode that sooner or later I think most folks will figure out. Once again, both parties are I won't name names, but both parties have people who are promising things that are completely irresponsible and can never be delivered. And I think the young people on this campus are smart enough to see that, see through that.
Right.
And I think most young people in general are. I would think that eventually a candidacy that levels with young people and starts with young people.
Right.
What matters most to this country is whether today's young people do have a brighter future than their parents. And what are we going to do to make that happen?
Exactly.
It won't happen at 1 or 2% economic growth, and it won't happen if we continue to plunder the young to subsidize the old, which is what we do today.
Right. What do you think that these candidates are going to have to do to gain my generation's enthusiasm?
Well, I want to first expound on this idea of the disenfranchisement of the American voter and the record turnout that the Republicans have been experiencing, comparable to 2008 for President Obama. I'm very curious what the governor and president thinks that's,
You can save a lot of time. You just call me Mitch.
Mitch, I know he likes Mitch. I'm curious what Mitch thinks about that, because at the end of the day, even though we're led to believe through his public statements that Donald Trump is willing to say something racist, xenophobic, homophobic, anything bigoted to get elected, what is responsible for the huge turnout among the disenfranchised or formerly disenfranchised Republican voters? Is it, and Mitch was talking about this a bit, is it a factor or function of the celebrity-driven culture that even independents and Democrats are re-registering and are attuned to politics in a way that they hadn't in the past? Or is it true that a lot of Republicans, and this is what people are going to say if Trump continues to spew that kind of hateful rhetoric, that there are some voters who were denied the opportunity to create a kind of regression